According to the Southern Poverty Law Center, there's been a significant increase in hate crimes across the country following the election of Donald Trump. They've documented more than 400 incidents, with anti-black, anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant attacks topping the list. Just to put that in perspective, we saw 250 hate crimes in the first 2 days. That's more than we normally see in a 6-month period. In his first television interview as president-elect, Donald Trump confronted the issue.
I'm very surprised to hear that. I hate to hear that. I mean, I hate to hear it. But you do hear it. I don't hear it. I saw one or two instances.
On social media?
But I think it's a very small amount. Again, I think it's the media.
Do you want to say anything to those people?
I would say don't do it. That's terrible. Because I'm going to bring this country together.
They're harassing Latinos, Muslims.
I am so saddened to hear that. And I say stop it.
Now, some of these hate crimes are happening right here in New York. Governor Cuomo has launched an investigation after swastika graffiti was discovered at student accommodation buildings at both the State University of New York in Nassau and the New School here in Manhattan. And in Wellsville, just south of Buffalo, a softball field defaced with the words, "Make America White Again." We want to welcome a special political panel to the programme. Huffington Post journalist Roraida Abdulaziz dedicates her reporting to tracking hate crimes, and New York City Council member Richie Torres also joins us. Roraida, Richie, thank you both so much for joining us. Roraida, let me start with you. As I mentioned, your reporting at the Huffington Post has focused on tracking these hate crimes. Looking at what you've observed in the past week, are we seeing something unprecedented?
Yes, so over at the Huffington Post, we've been tracking anti-Muslim rhetoric that both includes hate crimes, policy, forms of vandalism, and any type of anti-Muslim bias for the 2016 year. And we've seen a huge surge this entire year, especially within the last couple of months, with both hate crimes, forms of vandalism against the Muslim community. And particularly, we've seen it with Donald Trump supporters. So people are leaving their mark. An example of this was a mosque that was vandalized in Bayonne, New Jersey, just a couple of weeks ago, where people vandalized the mosque on the outside, writing Donald Trump and a lot of vulgar and hateful things towards the Muslim community. Mosques down in Florida have actually been burned down to the ground. There have been 4 mosques documented there that have been burned. And so we are seeing really deadly and strong effects coming from the Donald Trump campaign. And because he's not coming out and not condemning these people and not actively supporting minorities in the Muslim community, and he himself has had some very hateful rhetoric against the Muslim community, this hate is slowly becoming normalized, and that's the biggest fear against the Muslim community right now.
You say hate becoming normalized. I know as journalists, sometimes we become almost numb and desensitized, especially when you focus on an issue for a long period of time. I wonder what impact, though, this has on you personally.
I'm a very visibly Muslim woman. I wear the hijab every single day. And so every time I step out of my home, I step out of the office, I'm very conscious of that. And I've become very hyper aware because of this election. So I need to be careful when I'm commuting. I have to be very active in my surroundings. And unfortunately, take into consideration things that I don't want to take into consideration. I don't want to think about how close I am standing to the platform in case I run into someone who may be hateful. And it's not just me. It's definitely representative of the Muslim community. Just a couple of months ago, we had an incident, or excuse me, this was actually a couple of days ago, where a Muslim school teacher, also a Muslim woman wearing a hijab, got a note from one of her students that told her this doesn't belong here anymore and that she should take her headscarf and hang herself with it. And so we're also seeing these effects on children. And I think that's just very scary because it doesn't influence just this year and just this election season, but it also has an aftermath.
Richie, your community in the Bronx, one of the most diverse in New York City, and that in a sense makes it one of the most diverse communities in the country. What's the mood on the ground there?
I think my constituents and I are all shaken by the election. You know, we're in a state of shock and bewilderment, and we're wondering to ourselves, how could our country elect a man who muses about sexually assaulting women, who demonizes Mexicans as criminals, who advocates banning Muslims from the United States, who receives and refuses to renounce an endorsement from the Ku Klux Klan, and who just appointed as his chief strategist an avowed white nationalist with a history of domestic violence.
We saw in that interview there, he said, stop it, stop it.
You can say, the trouble is that the greatest platform that exists is the platform of the presidency or presidential candidate. And he spent a year and a half using his presidential level platform, legitimizing fear and hatred of Muslim Americans and Mexican Americans in particular. And so it's hardly an accident that you have a hate crime surge here in New York City and elsewhere in the country.
And really, I want to go back to the hate crimes here. The statistics we talked about so far from the Southern Poverty Law Center, they don't stand alone. The FBI came out this week and said that hate crimes seen a surge this year, most notably a 67% increase in acts of hate towards Muslims in 2016. The NYPD yesterday announcing that hate crimes are up 31% in 2016. It seems like the election has played a significant role in that, but beyond that, what other factors do you believe are leading to this increase in hate?
There's also an unknown factor when it comes to Muslim Americans. For some reason, the image of Muslims here in the U.S. are still seen as the other. They're not seen as Americans who are born and raised here. They're not seen as a part of this country's history. People who we elect, people that we go see on a daily basis. And because there's this fear-mongering and this otherization of the Muslim community, hate crimes continue to exist. Over 60% of Americans have actually never met a Muslim. About 87% have never stepped into a mosque. And over 50%, in more than half the country, have an unfavorable view of Islam. So when you have such high statistics and of negative views against the Muslim community, it just makes it that much more easy for these hate crimes to exist. Muslim Americans are not just Arabs and immigrants, but Muslim Americans are African Americans, they're Latino Americans, they're Mexican Americans. And so once we understand just how complex and diverse the Muslim American community is, we can slowly start bringing down some of those numbers.
And Richard, we saw the mayor yesterday go to Trump Tower to meet with Donald Trump. He had a press conference after, and he told the media everything he said to Donald Trump, his expectations. We heard little, nothing in terms of what the president-elect's response was from the mayor. One of the issues here with the Muslim community here is surveillance. During the course of the campaign, Trump made it clear that we may see a return to increased surveillance of Muslim communities. Is that something that could become a reality in the months ahead?
Yes, I'm concerned that Donald Trump is going to use the instruments of the presidency to continue or some of the worst policies that have been directed toward Muslims. It's a real concern.
And as a politician here in New York, anything you can do? Members of the council?
We have control over certainly the surveillance operations. We have some influence over the surveillance operations of the NYPD.
It's a pleasure to have you both on the show, as always. Thank you for your time today. Roraid Abdelaziz, journalist with the Huffington Post, and Richie Torres, a New York City Council member. Thank you both so much for coming in today.
Thank you.